First off with the price, so the Note 8 Pro is around 200 bucks right now. I'll put the link down below. And yeah, it is a really solid phone for this price point. So I really like this phone. So let's go ahead and get into it with the hardware. So the hardware, I really like the look of this phone. It's one of my favorite looking phones, especially this color. This is the pearl white color, and it looks really good. It actually has kind of like a pinkish tint to it when it hits the light. I think it looks really cool. It's actually a glass back on here, plastic railing that you would think was metal, but it's actually plastic. And yeah, it just feels super solid in the hand. I do think this is kind of a, I guess, heavy phone when you first get it. It does feel like, you know, it's got a little bit of weight to it. So, you know, do note that. But yeah, so design wise, I really like it. You have your fingerprint scanner on the back right here. We also have our camera setup, which we will get into later. We have our power button volume rocker. Down below, we still have our headphone jack, and we still have USB Type-C with a single firing speaker, and we have our SIM tray over here. Alright, so let's talk about the display on the Note 8 Pro. It's an IPS panel. It's 6.53 inches. It's a 1080p panel and 395 for the PPI. We also have our water drop notch right here as well. And we have a pretty good screen to body ratio, I believe around 85%. So the bezels are pretty slim on here, not the slimmest, but pretty slim. But overall the display is fine. I've never had an issue with this phone outdoors when it was sunny and stuff like that. Overall, this IPS display has some pretty good viewing angles, and it gives you some really nice color. So I was really happy with the display on here. I haven't really had an issue with the display, and like I said, you know, no, it's not an AMOLED panel or OLED, so you won't be able to take advantage of the dark mode on here, but overall for what it is, it's still a really good screen. Now this phone is running Android 10 with MIUI 12, and MIUI 12 has really been cleaned up. It's really polished, and something that I really appreciate on this phone. The gestures and everything are really smooth. The animations are really smooth, and just how you get to certain things, like if I wanted to get to my floating windows right here, let's say I want to open up this right here, and if I wanted to just snap it up here, I could do that. So I really like how they do little stuff and, you know, sort of implement this stuff into the OS here. And if I go to my toggles, you have all of the toggles that you would really want on here. So we have our dark mode on here, of course, our screencast. This phone actually has an IR blaster, so if you wanted to control your TV with this phone, you could, or whatever. You also have a built-in screen recorder on here as well. I can get to my floating windows, to battery saver. All that stuff is on here. I really like how the settings is laid out and how everything looks in MIUI 12. So when you go into, like, say for instance this about phone, everything just looks really nice. It has like this flat look. I really like the icons. Now with Android, you can customize it and make it look, any phone, make it look like this, honestly. But you do have a few cool things in here. We have our dual apps, and then we have app lock, so we can lock certain applications and stuff like that. And then we go out to our additional, we can change the screen if we want to have that notch present or not, or if you want the buttons to be right here. The gestures are super smooth on this phone as well. This phone does have an LED notification light, which I really love on here. So you will actually know when you get a notification if you step away from your phone, which is always nice. So MIUI 12 is really nice. The only thing I don't like is that you have this page instead of the Google Now page. You guys know how I'm a big fan of having the Google Now page. I wish it was on every Android phone. This is okay. It's just shortcuts that I never really use when I'm on this phone. It has like news and stuff, but it's not the Google Now page. It doesn't adjust to what you're already searching on Google. So that's why I always say that I really prefer the Google Now page. Now the Note 8 Pro is a very powerful phone when it comes to gaming. At this price point, you have the Helio G90T and the Mali G76 GPU. You also have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. So this phone can actually play Call of Duty, Fortnite, PUBG, whatever you throw at it, at pretty high settings. So I really love that about this phone. It is an excellent gaming phone if that's something you want to do. This is one of my favorites to recommend because it can can play them on high. You have a big, nice, beautiful display on here as well. And yeah, this phone does not heat up or anything. I just found the gaming experience to be super solid on this phone. So again, you can pretty much play anything you want on this phone, no problem, and no real hiccups with this phone with that 6 gigs of RAM. So it's really good at multitasking too. So overall, for the specs on this phone, it's still pretty solid for 2021. You have a single firing speaker on this phone, which sounds pretty good, and I'll go ahead and let you guys hear it at max volume. So no distortion on the Note 8 Pro, and you have some really nice thumpiness with the bass. Overall, it's a really good sounding speaker, very loud and crisp and clear. The main thing I look for with these phones is like distortion, because a lot of phones at the $200 price point, if you crank the volume all the way up, you will get like that hissing and distortion sound. So this one does not have it. So you have a few ways of getting into your phone. Of course, you have your pin and pattern. You also have the fingerprint scanner, which is back here and it works very fast. What a lot of people don't like about this phone is that it's really close to the camera, so you can kind of smudge it, which I've never had an issue with, because once you get used to it, you really know where it is, so you don't smudge it. But I can see if that is something that might get on your nerve, but I definitely don't think that's a reason not to buy this phone. You also have face unlock on this phone as well, which is also very fast. So for getting into your device, everything is super fast. This phone also does not have any IP rating or splash proof rating on here, so if you get it wet, you know, drop it in a toilet, it might break. Also, again, you have that IR blaster on here, which is a very underrated feature, or the infrared port, so you can go ahead and control your TV, air conditioner with this phone, which is really cool. You do have NFC for your mobile payments as well, so if you're somebody that is depending on that, this phone does have that for you. Alright, so let's talk about the camera. So you have a quad camera setup on the Note 8 Pro. It's a 64 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. You also have 4K video on this phone with a 20 megapixel selfie camera. So the photos on this phone are really good. So you get really good shots with this phone, very high detailed shots. White balance is usually really good on this phone, and when I say good detail, I mean this phone does take some really good detailed shots, especially when you zoom in. A lot of phones at this price will lose a lot of the detail. This phone retains it, and that's one of the unique things I like about it. Now, you don't get that effect so much on the ultra wide, of course, but for the main sensor, it is really spot on, and it's not as the ultra wide isn't nowhere near as color accurate as the main sensor as well, so that's one of the things I noticed too. But overall, for detail, dynamic range, just indoor shots, white balance, depth of field definitely is there. Overall, I just really like taking shots with this. I think the selfie camera, when you put it in good light, is really good. It gets skin tones really nice. I just really like that as well. So the Note 8 Pro's camera is super solid. I really like it. Like I said, the macro camera is fun to play with if you like to get like really close in on certain stuff. So overall, no issues with the camera at this price point. I do think the video is kind of subpar on this phone. It's not the best that I've seen. It's like, it looks a little like low res, kind of lacking in detail if you're not really in like good lighting, or if you're in decent lighting, it still doesn't really come out that great. But yeah, so overall the cameras are really good on here. I give it like a B+. Alright, so let's talk about battery life on this phone. You have a 4,500 milliamp battery on this phone, and you also have 18-watt fast charging. You do not have any type of wireless charging. So this phone gets okay battery life, I think decent. I usually get around 7 hours to 7 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time on this phone. This phone also has really good standby time as well. But yeah, so you would expect it to get at least around 8 to 8 hours and 30 minutes, but I think since MIUI 12 is so heavy, the phone just can't do it. But battery life, I think for the average person, you can definitely get through a full day. I would like to see kind of like faster charging on this phone too, because charging the 18 watts, if you use phones with higher watts, it is a little bit slow. But overall, I found the battery life experience to be just fine. Like I said, if you're you know, even a light to medium user, you can easily get through the day with this phone. If you're like a hardcore, you know, gaming person, then you'll definitely have to charge it for sure. So overall, the Note 8 Pro is a really good phone. Since I got the phone, they've been pushing updates to this phone, which is something that I really appreciate. It gets a lot of security patches, a lot of updates. If you are worried about this phone not getting Android 11 or something like that, it should get it. But if you're worried about it, because you know with these budget phones, sometimes they'll just drop support randomly. But I would get like the Note 8 Pro, which I have videos on the channel as well. I mean, not the Note 8 Pro, the Note 9 Pro, excuse me. But yeah, so if you want the newer version of this phone, I just think the price is really solid for this phone, and the specs are right, the cameras are great, it's got ton of features, ton of customization, so it's just a really nice phone. So what do you guys think about the Note 8 Pro 2021? Be sure to let me know. Catch you guys in the next one.